And this is John Barr up in the Chicago office. We're going to get started here in a minute or two. We'll let everybody on the conference call join in, so we'll get started in about 2 minutes. For those of you on the conference call, can you hear through the speaker clearly?
This is Juana Maria with Illinois WorkNet. I just want to go ahead and show you some of the features on the webinar. And so if you'll notice, along with your PowerPoint, to the left-hand side of your webinar screen, you'll have two boxes. The first one is a Q&A chat pod for those of you joining us on the webinar via your computer, so you're listening just through your speakers. You wouldn't have the option to go ahead and ask questions verbally, but you can post your questions in the chat pod. For those of you that have not downloaded the information that was sent out, you can go ahead and go to the monitor training file share, and you could click on these items, select it, and save it to your computer. This is how you can download the instructional documents that we've included for you. Now, underneath all of that, you'll have a little guy with his hand raised. You can go ahead and click on that, and what you'll notice is that you have a couple of options. You can agree, disagree, tell us to speak louder or slower. Usually for me it's slower. And so go ahead and let us know if you could hear us by raising your hand so that we can make sure everyone, very good. It's like Simon Says now. Simon Says hands down. And so we'll go ahead and give you just a quick little intro so you'll know. John Barr will do the first part of the webinar so that he goes through the DCEO systems, the 18 different systems you'll learn about today. And then I'll do some of the IWTS training on the Illinois WorkNet portal. We'll have a little demo for you so that you're familiar with all of this as we've gone through it. And then we'll have some Q&A questions at the end that all of you can participate in. And so with that, I'll let John take over.
Great. And thank you, everyone. This is the second training webinar that we've had for the incumbent worker training grants, also known as sector-based grants. And so appreciate Illinois WorkNet and Juana for helping putting this together for everyone. As I mentioned in the first webinar, this training process and the monitoring of these grants is a work in progress. The fundamental review of these grants is relatively straightforward, but we are using a number of new systems, new for some folks. Others may have been familiar into these new systems, and new systems being DCEO's e-grant systems, the Illinois WorkNet, and the incumbent worker tracking system. Certainly using ACME, there's a new monitoring component there, and then IWTS, and then also IBIS. So a number of different systems, and we see this as an opportunity just to reinforce the use of these systems. We know that there will be additional grants in the near future that will utilize these systems, and so that's one of the reasons we're taking the time to review this process. So the training will help us accomplish the immediate task of monitoring the sector-based grants, and will also provide a foundation to monitor the incumbent worker projects that are administered through the LWIAs. Again, this is a high-level training of the systems that support the incumbent worker training projects, and it will certainly be relevant as we move forward with these additional grants that are issued by the department. As we go on, Shelley, if you would mute your, I think we're getting some feedback there. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go into the PowerPoint, and actually, before I do that, I'm going to go back to that's fine. Just to point out that we are going to be reviewing the monitoring instrument, and we have made updates to that monitoring instrument. We will be sending out a follow-up email within the next week or week and a half with the final instructions to monitor these grants. But the basics that were sent to you 2 weeks ago remain the same as far as monitoring these grants. So the purpose first is to just review our monitoring approach, and as far as where are these grants, what were their genesis, and basically as part of the state's strategic plan, we're given the authorization to provide LWIAs to transfer up to 10% of their dislocated worker formula allocation to support incumbent worker training programs. Not all LWIAs do this. There are a handful that do. In addition, we received dollars through the ARRA, and we are providing direct grants to organizations and companies that are providing incumbent worker training. And these grants are known as the sector-based grants. As far as the authorizing policy, basically the policy that dictate or provide us guidance is PL 33 change 1 and 07 PL 33 change 2. Those are the policy letters that outline the eligibility for individuals, and we'll go over this in some more detail. It's also important to note that the USDOL has issued a TEGL regarding incumbent worker training projects, and they advise the states that your incumbent worker projects have to fall under what is known as layoff aversion, and specifically meaning that a worker's job has to be saved with an existing employer that's at risk of downsizing or closing, or a worker is at risk of a dislocation, transitions into another job within that same employer. So what does all that mean? It basically, as of June of 2010, DCEO sent out a notice to the LWIAs indicating that they should hold off on initiating any new incumbent worker training projects until the state can update its incumbent worker training policy so it is in alignment with this new TEGL. So the bottom line here is that the immediate focus of our monitoring will be on the sector-based grants as opposed to LWIAs who have implemented incumbent worker training projects. So again, you may find that LWIAs are operating incumbent worker trainings, previous projects previous to June of 2010, and you'll have to work out the monitoring on a case-by-case basis with your regional manager. Any questions about the policy? So more about our approach and some of the background of these grants. These sector-based grants, again, DCEO focused on supporting key industry sectors as part of our workforce development mission here at DCEO. We focused on key industry sectors that offer career pathways with good wages, expect to have rising number of job openings, and drive the competitiveness of Illinois' economy. Obviously, these are no surprise as you work with your LWIAs, agriculture and food-related manufacturing, healthcare, IT, manufacturing, traditional manufacturing, and transportation, distribution, and logistics. So, background, DCEO solicited proposals using ARRA funding to support these industry sectors. The goal was to prevent dislocations, to support recovery in these key sectors, and providing additional training and strengthening these companies' workforce. The sector-based grants were awarded in the spring of 2010 and must be monitored by December 31st, 2010. So again, these are using WIA authorization funded through the stimulus. So we are on the hook for monitoring these by the end of the calendar year. It's also anticipated that these grants will end actually the majority of these grants are scheduled to end in the spring of 2011. So we may need to go back and do some final monitoring on these as well from a programmatic standpoint in the late spring of 2011. So we're looking at May/June to come back and review these as well. So again, it's really going to depend on the grant project and the progress of the grant. Now with us here in Chicago is Bill Leslie, who is the grant manager for the majority of these. Bill works with Jill Meskey in the Special Initiatives, Special Projects Unit. As some of you may know, Ray Williams has left the department, and the grants that he was working with are now assigned to Bill and Jill. So one of the key things that we want to do as we go through the monitoring process is to work directly with the program staff so that these grantees aren't getting bombarded with calls from 6 different places within DCEO. So as many of you may know, when you issue a grant, or when DCEO issues a grant, there are a number of reports and accountability tools, and so there are a number of different things that we require, and certainly there's a programmatic monitoring, there is the fiscal monitoring, they also have ARRA reporting, separate ARRA reporting requirements, they also have separate other paper quarterly reports that are due. So all of this goes to say that we're trying to avoid the confusion, and frankly, we're trying to avoid hassling the grantees. Certainly we have a job to do as far as going in and monitoring them and ensuring their programmatic compliance to the grant, but we're trying to coordinate this as much as possible and to reduce kind of the bureaucratic nature as much as possible. So the key here is going to be working with your regional manager and also with Bill and the program staff. So again, as we get into the specific monitoring instrument, we'll go through the specific steps. But again, wanted to just lay that foundation, lay that approach out as again, we're looking to ensure their core compliance, and we want to work with these grantees. We're not looking to be overly bureaucratic, and if there is an issue or concern, we want to work with Bill and the program staff to see how we can work to, if it is getting additional information, or if there are some things that can be corrected, we want to look to do that within a very short time frame here. So we'll go over that timeline when we get into the instrument, and also that information certainly will be shared with all of you, and your regional managers will also be going out with you and discussing the specific timeline and your assignments. So just the big picture overview of the monitoring instrument. There's three elements to the instrument. The first is to see basically what is the program authorization. Are they using funds through an LWIA, or is this a direct grant from DCEO to the organization or company? Now again, the grants that we're going to be looking at in the next 3 months, they're going to be all direct grants. So the way that we've set up this monitoring instrument, though, could be used to monitor the LWIAs in their administration of local incumbent worker training projects. Does that all make sense? Okay. So the second element is reviewing the project's progress. Okay? There are certain things within each grant that are kind of key that distinguish a grant within the department's accounting system, and that's basically their budget and scope of work. And that's one of the things that, as a monitor, we're going to be reviewing. So we review that the grantee is in compliance with the reporting requirements, and again, we mentioned that being a direct grantee, they have all of these reports that are due. They also, the grantee, the company, have to report participant information into Ilinois WorkNet's IWTS. And that's the part that Awana is going to show us in the second part of our training this morning. So again, there is potential for confusion when we pick up the phone and call the grantee. They're going to say, well, who are you, and now what do you need, type of a thing. So we want to minimize this as much as possible. And so again, that's why we're using Bill as a primary contact when we work with the companies. So what we're asking monitors to do is essentially compare the grant agreement and the incumbent worker training plans with the project reports that are submitted by the grantee to verify that they are implementing the project as outlined in their project plans. Pretty straightforward. To say, okay, you said in your grant agreement that you were going to train 100 people. Are you on track to train 100 people? And are you providing the training that you outlined within your training project plan? The third element, element C, is worker eligibility. So monitors are going to verify the eligibility of the incumbent worker participants as defined in 07PL 33, change 2. Again, that's kind of your primary source for looking at eligibility of the participants. And again, there are a couple of things. There are some differences between regular WIA participants and incumbent worker participants, in that you don't have to do the full eligibility. The WIA is not required to, or I'm sorry, the grantee, if it is the WIA or the company, is not required to have a file on that incumbent worker, but they are required to report those participant activities in IWTS. So that is a bit of a difference. Now, under some of these sector-based grants that you may be reviewing, there may be some adult and dislocated workers that are included in this training. I don't think that there's any of those grants in the Northeast region. I think there may be some in the Cook region. I know that there are some in other areas of the state. So in other words, you know, a portion of the project is going for just incumbent workers. The other is for adult and dislocated workers. If you're working with adult and dislocated workers, they have to follow those eligibility criteria. So when you look at how the monitoring is set up in ACME, you'll see that those components will also be included, and you'll just have to, you know, get a listing of those individuals. So that will be an additional step that isn't necessarily included in the instructions for the incumbent worker part of this. So that's kind of a piece on top of the overall incumbent worker monitoring. So incumbent worker is defined by the policy, current policy that is, as an individual with an employment relationship with a participating employer or group of participating employers in a targeted industry as cited in the local plan. And the goal, obviously, increase their skills in an occupation or prepare the workforce for entry into a new occupation within the targeted workforce. Again, incumbent workers are not subject to WIA eligibility requirements. They don't have a choice in the training. It's dictated by the company, and participant files aren't maintained, and individual employment outcomes are not counted for WIA federal performance standards. Now, the individuals are reported. We do count the activity that is happening, and part of that is captured through the Illinois workNet IWTS system. So there is a data transfer between the systems that we're going to review. So that is an initial overview of the training or of the monitoring instruments. And the next slide is the supporting systems that we're going to use to pull information from and verify reports, including eGrants, Illinois workNet, ACME, IBIZ, and then also IWTS is another one that will be thrown in there as well. Any initial questions at this point?
You mentioned adults and dislocated workers could be included. What's like a scenario? I'm trying to picture how they would be included in an incumbent worker
training project. So,
yeah.
So the question was, what is a scenario where a adult or dislocated worker might be included in the project? So, you know, let's just say that a industry association received a sector-based grant for transportation and logistics, okay? Maybe this industry association has training projects with two different companies. Let's just say they're working with FedEx and UPS, okay? And they have two separate projects under the umbrella of one grant, okay? And so they're training UPS on how they do their, you know, their systems. Maybe they're, you know, upgrading on a, you know, their skill on, you know, quality management or whatever other project. Same thing with FedEx. They would go through their company's, their training, whatever their company's needs are. Then within that industry association, there may be a pool of folks who are, you know, sitting on the bench kind of thing, or, you know, ready to move into the workforce, who may be also in the interest of being, you know, a proper use of funds. They are also sitting in on the training, even though that they don't have a job with UPS or FedEx. Maybe they're taking those courses so they can improve their skills and be more marketable, and maybe those individuals are going into the pipeline of working for a UPS or a FedEx. But they don't meet the definition of an incumbent worker because they're not working for the company that's providing the training. So that could be a situation where, again, for the sake of, if you're doing kind of classroom-based training, you've got open seats, and if you've got 20 incumbent workers and you've got seats for 10 others, it makes sense logistically just to throw those other 10 in. And so, again, depending on the program, that may be the case, but that's just a generic example.
No, okay. And those people would not be included in performance?
The ones who are adult and dislocated worker would be included in performance and would be subject to all of the eligibility criteria and review of a regular adult or dislocated worker as defined in our instrument. Okay, the question from the chat is it true that sector-based training includes only the following industries: manufacturing, logistics, and healthcare? The answer to that is no. I believe it is, we'll send it out when we send the updated instrument, but there's also a green industries, and I believe there's one other that is escaping my brain at this point. But generally speaking, the majority of these projects are going to be in healthcare. I think that's the bulk of it. And Bill, what are the other ones? We got 32 grants? Is that right?
Grants. Healthcare takes about 20 some odd. 73.2 is manufacturing, and 73.3 is transportation logistics, of which we only have 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then Genesis Housing, Heartland Community, those are all your green grants, of which there's only 4.
4 grants. Okay.
So, yeah, the bulk are your healthcare.
Okay. So, yeah, Shelley.
Has the state defined a list of the green occupations or industries?
I don't know if the state has defined a listing of green industries. I think that's an ongoing process. I'll have to put that on our list of questions. I don't know the answer. Bill, do you know the answer to that?
I don't.
Okay.
What are the current ones?
On the green, Chicago Transit Authority, Genesis House, Heartland Community College. It doesn't give me in here, this particular form, what their scope of work is, so I'd have to get into that more in depth.
Yeah, yeah.
But you dealt with Chicago Transit Authority, that has to do, I'm sure, with reducing energy costs within whatever they can do, and they're training some people to do some energy auditing.
Yeah, yeah. So just on the phone, just so you can hear perhaps, the question was about what are examples of the green, green energy sector grants. An example was the CTA or CHA, looking at doing some energy audits training. And there's only a handful, perhaps 3 or 4 of those.
Genesis House is doing weatherization.
Right, Genesis House doing weatherization training. So that Genesis House is a nonprofit organization, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So again, I think the key for the majority of these grants is that you're going to have to look at these kind of on a case-by-case basis. Generally speaking, they have a similar framework of how they're authorized, and the information within their grant agreements is generally the same. But you're going to see, as we kind of work through an example here, there are some subtle differences that you're going to have to look at on a case-by-case basis. And so what I'd like to do is just go through the monitoring instrument and just go through some of the highlights of the instrument and look at using some of the different systems to pull the information that you're going to need. And if we look at element A of the incumbent worker training project, and again, for those of you on the phone, you can, let me see if I can, we will be we'll be sending out the updated instrument to everyone, as I said, within the next week or week and a half. One of the first things that you're going to do is take a look at the grant agreement. And so you're going to use the eGrant system and go into account lookup and then type in the grant number here and then click on search. So what we've done in the monitoring instructions is give you try to give you a roadmap with screenshots for the different systems, because again, we realize that some of you use these systems all the time, but others, this is brand new, and so we're trying to just give kind of a middle-of-the-road training here. So again, I apologize if I'm going too fast, apologize I'm going too slow here, but again, the intent is to just give you an overview of how to pull this information, and the technical instructions that are included in the monitoring instrument will give you these screenshots that you need to go into these different systems. And certainly if you have any questions, ask me or your regional manager, and we'll be happy to help you out with these. So you type in the grant number, and you can see that it's ARRA Manufacturing, and you can see that the organization's name here is Aero Gear Company. So what you're going to do is you're going to want to see the information that they submitted. You're going to want to get their grant agreement and any modifications. Okay? So you'll find that right here under the Documents section. And you'll see that there'll be an application library, a report library. If there were any modifications, there would be a third dot here. That would be modification library, and you can look at that as well. So you're going to basically go into this application library and find the signed grant agreement. And again, eGrant is an evolving system, and they're getting more standardized. But some of the file names, just like when we have our systems at Acme, they have a protocol of what they want a grant agreement to be called. But again, it's an ongoing training process with staff, so it's not always called fully executed grant agreement or notice of grant agreement. So you may have to poke around a little bit in here to find the fully executed, fully signed grant agreement. So you can go ahead and you can download that. In this case, I'm just going to do a view. And one of the things that DCEO does is send out a letter, it's called a welcome package to new grantees, that says, attached is your grant, and these are the reporting requirements. And so you have to kind of page through the first 5 or 6 pages till you get to the actual grant agreement. And you'll see here that I do have the grant for Aero Gear Company. It's for $80,000. And one of the key things I'm looking at here is the duration of the grant. You can see January 1st of 2010 through February 28th of 2011. And then the next page, you can see that this indeed is the signed, executed grant agreement. And you'll see here, this is the budget, and the next part is the scope of work. This is primarily one of the key places that you'll be looking at that defines what this project is. Okay, so this gives you more of a big picture view of the grant agreement. So again, what you're doing is you're saving this. You're going to be saving the grant agreement and uploading it into ACME again for the purposes of auditing. We want to illustrate to the auditors, even though that it is in a different system within DCEO, we want to present a full and complete picture of, at the time of our monitoring review, this was the fully executed grant agreement and any modifications if applicable. Okay, so then the next part of this is to go into the incumbent worker tracking system in Ilinois WorkNet. And all of you should have workforce professionals accounts in Ilinois WorkNet. So you go ahead and again, this is more of a refresher of, okay, you go into the Illinois workforce professionals pathway. You go ahead and log in to your account. Again, just staying towards the upper right-hand corner there. Just Workforce Professionals pathway. Log into my account. You're going to go ahead and log in. And so the purpose of this component is to take a look at the specific project plans, okay? So the grant agreement gave you a big picture view of what was authorized and how much money they're going to spend. Illinois WorkNet, the incumbent worker reporting system, provides you with the more detailed plan of the courses and the participants. So you'll see here when you have your, you've logged into the Workforce Professionals pathway, you'll go on your left-hand side of the screen, you'll see this blue bar, and you'll see incumbent workers. You'll click on that. And again, these steps are included as technical attachment number 2. So again, what you're doing here is you're pulling down the project plan, okay? So you scroll down the page and you can look and select a grantee, and on this I'm going to be selecting ARRA Gear Company, and I'm going to be going pretty fast because Juan is going to cover a lot of this incumbent worker as an aside, because again this is brand new to everyone. And then I'm going to do a search. Again, you'll know your grantee because that will be the one that will be, those will be the project or projects that are assigned to you. So once you hit select, you'll see the results here at the bottom of the screen. And what you want to do is click on the review. When you click on review, a window pops up and the project plan will load in. So it's basically all of the details of the project, ARRA Gear Company, the amount, a brief description, the grantee, who are the primary contacts, gives a little bit more detailed view of the project, gives you a summary of where they're at in the process. So again, if they said, well, we're going to provide training to 25 people. You know, we've got 6 have exited the project with credentials. So you can take a look at where the project status is. Also outcomes. So you go around and you can play with this. What you then want to do is you can do a couple of things. We're going to want to save this project plan, okay? So you can print it out and scan it and load it into ACME. you can go up to the left-hand screen and you can do a save as and save it as a web file and then load that into Acme, or you can copy and paste it, put it into a PDF file. It doesn't matter necessarily to us what format it's in. It's our understanding that Acme will accept an HTML document. Just make sure that that HTML document isn't necessarily live, that it captures all of the information of the project plan. So again, what we need in Acme is the authorizing document, so the grant agreement, project plans, and then we're going to do the same thing for the quarterly reports. Okay? So to get to the reports, and we're moving to Acme Technical Instruction number 3, you're going to want to look at, again, on the left-hand side on the blue bar there, you'll see the reporting. So you'll click on reporting, and workNet will churn its magic here. Still loading. So I'm going to go ahead and click it again. Here we go. Again, you just keep an eye on your browser to see, because again, the IWTS, the Illinois WorkNet, it's pulling information from a number of different sources. So, we don't necessarily see what's happening behind the scenes, but it's pulling a lot of different information. So just be patient with it and watch your, watch your status bars. And always once it's done, use your scroll on the right-hand side here to scroll down the page, because sometimes it's not right in the view where you can see it. So again, what we did to see this page was we clicked on reporting, and then this screen pops up, and we're going to find our project. And in this case, I'm doing ARRA Gear Company. So I'm going to click on that, and you can see up here that my browser is processing that request. So just give it a minute to pull up that file. So I am on a little connection here. So you're going to want to then pull the different reports. So you can see that this project had a report that was submitted March 31st. There was a report that was submitted on June 30th, and then there's one that is due November 1st. So these projects are following the calendar year quarter, and they're due 30 days after the end of the quarter. So that means November 1st is a big day for us because their third quarterly report is due. So the companies have to provide the information into IWTS by November 1st, and we're working with Bill and the program staff to, again, push out those reminders that, again, it's going to be critical for us to have that worker information and the project status loaded into IWTS so we can get a good assessment of the status of the project. So you're going to go ahead and you can select one of those reports, and the same technical or logistical process that you followed in saving the project plan, you're going to be basically following that to save the quarterly report. But there is one additional step that I want to point you to, and again, this is covered in ACME Technical Instruction number 3. You're going to want to look at, when you click on report, you'll see that there are a number of different tabs that show up here. So you'll see project status report, incumbent worker training status, outcomes, and review and submit. Now, I don't want to go into a lot of this because Awana's going to take care of that in the second part of our training, but basically these are different screens that the company can go into to upload updated information, okay? Provide a status update, input specific participant information, but what we want to see is a summary of what they have submitted, and you're going to want to go to the far right-hand side here. You'll see under Review and Submit, you'll click on that, and oh, it's loading. See, sometimes I get ahead of myself. So again, you check the bottom bar and the top bar here for when it's loading. So you can see the project status will give you a summary of all of these different tabs, okay? And so you can, again, use the file, save as, or you can print it out and scan it, or you can save it as a PDF and upload it to ACME. However you need to get the information as far as the different quarterly reports, we should have that loaded into ACME to show that that's what you reviewed. So again, big picture here, you're looking at the grant agreement, any modifications, project reports, and the quarterly reports. Now, it's important to note that there are some sector-based grants out there that have multiple projects that are authorized under one grant, okay? So that the example, let's go back to that logistics example where let's say that it was an industry association and they had one project was for UPS, one project was for FedEx. Those would be two separate projects here in Illinois, the IWTS system. So you would have to identify those different projects. You would have to pull those separate project plans and the reports for those projects, but it goes under the large heading of one grant. So again, that may be just a situational thing where you'll need to review, on a grant-by-grant basis. But I think I think the majority of these 32 grants have only one project that is in operation. Okay. So the next technical process that I want to go through is it refers to uploading the participants into ACME. And so you'll go to ACME, you'll identify your event here, and again, I'm looking at ARRA Gear Company, and you'll see that we have created an incumbent worker training projects component to ACME. And so again, if your WIA that you're reviewing has incumbent worker, you may be seeing this, and this will be new, and this is where you can review those projects. Again, we're waiting for further clarification, but again, in the future, this may be included to monitor the WIA's implementation of those projects. But for our immediate purpose, again, we're looking at the three elements. Element A was the general authorization that shows that this is a direct grant to the to a company. So that's pretty straightforward. We're ensuring that they have an approved grant and they have an approved work plan, and that work plan we just pulled out of Illinois working at the IWTS system. So the majority of those questions aren't going to be an issue, but again, we're just covering our bases. The second portion is looking at the status of the grant, and we're asking questions about did they submit their quarterly reports? Did they submit them on time? Are they making progress in the grant? So if in that transportation grant, if they said they're going to train 100 people, and we're sitting here on November 1st and they've only trained 10, a reasonable person would say that they're not on track to finish the grant by February 28th of 2011, if that is the end date. Okay, and that majority, just FYI, the majority of these grants are scheduled to end at the end of February. So one of the things we're doing is making a bit of a subjective assessment of where they're at in the process. And that's, again, why we want to work directly with Bill and Jill and the regional managers to identify, okay, what are the facts and what needs to take place in our professional judgment, okay? So in this case, we would probably say that it appears the project is not on track to meet the performance goals as outlined in their project plans. We're recommending that they consider a grant extension or project modification, okay? So you'll see some of that language is included in the monitoring instrument that you have. And you'll see within the instrument there are the actual findings and the language, and those are pretty generic, so we may need to tweak the language on a case-by-case basis, but those are the primary issues that we anticipate having when we look at the project status and the project plan. So that all, again, is on element B, using the e-grant system for the grant agreements and reports, the Illinois workNet system for the project plans and reports, and finally, the third element is looking at the incumbent worker eligibility, and I'm going to be going through ACME Technical Instruction number 4, and this is uploading the participants from Illinois workNet into ACME. And so what you're going to do is, just as on a regular formula monitoring, you can use, the similar steps. And so you click on View in that component 7C1, then you'll go to Actions and Upload Universe. And something is not showing here. For some reason, it's not giving me the grant number today. It should. Within this box here, there should be a option to type in a grant number. I'll have to find out why this is not showing.
Because you're already in that grant, John. You're already in ARRA gear.
Right.
You looked up, so it's...
Right, right. But it should, there should be a separate box right under 7C1. There should be a separate box that has grant number. And so you would type in that grant number and then preview the data. And again, it may be because I've already done this. No, the system is having an error. So again, you can follow the technical instructions. It was there as of late last week, so there may be a technical issue that we're encountering here with ACME. So you'll preview that data, and then just like any formula monitoring, you'll upload that universe. It's pulling that information from IWTS, and then you're going to get a list and go through our regular protocols of selecting individuals. Okay, so if it is generally, hold on, let me get the. So if you're on page 5 of the incumbent worker instructions, you can see if there's 1 to 50 participants, you select 10, 51 to 100, 10 plus 10% over 51, and if it's over 100, select 35. Okay, so similar protocol as far as the numbers go. One of the key things is that participants may be enrolled in multiple training courses, okay? So what we're doing is those individuals are going to be listed, they're going to have a separate line for every course that they're listed in. So they could, theoretically be, in 3 or 4 different courses. If you're selecting that individual, so John Smith, he's going to go into, quality management, lean engineering, 2 or 3 different courses. If you select him, select all 3 of his entries for review. Okay. So let me see if I guess it doesn't matter if it. Again, I'll be following up with ACME to ensure that it is working. But again, just like in a regular formula monitoring, you'll have the option of including the individuals or not. And as you can see, it does have the participants that are loaded here. I have not selected anyone as an example here, but you can see that it's similar to what we've done with other components. All right, so now that you have your list from ACME, you'll see you select your list. You may want to print that off. There will be an IWTS interface or lookup interface. So just like when we're working with trade customers, you're going into IWTS, into the private information screen to get someone's full Social Security number. There will be an IWTS lookup screen that you can get a participant's full SSN. And the reason why we're doing that is so you can look up a Mondet in the Illinois Biz system, okay? So the IWTS lookup screen is being developed as we speak. That may be a reason why we're having technical difficulties. That should be ready within the next 2 weeks here. The timeline on all of this is going to be pretty tight. But again, we don't believe that we'll have good grantee data as far as participants go until that November 1st quarterly report deadline, okay? So just to close the loop as far as the technical instructions, technical instruction 4 shows you how to upload the client information. It's very similar to other formula monitoring. Technical instruction number 5 basically outlines the process of going into the new IBIZ system and pulling a Mondet, and that's pretty straightforward. If you have issues as far as getting into the IBIZ system, follow back with Sherry Brown-Macklin, and she'll make sure that your RAC FID it gets either reset or that you get the access there. But again, the IBIZ system is another system that is brand new, and you should have some basic information on those screens. And basically, technical instruction number 5 just shows you, you log in, you type in the individual's full Social Security number towards the upper left-hand portion of that screen, and then you go into the claims and just arrow down to the MON debt, and you're verifying that the participant is working with the company, okay, or was working with the company at the time of the training, okay? Now, this may be an area where individuals don't show up in MON debts. We know that there may be data lag, or there may be other issues, or maybe the company didn't report the Social Security number properly, or what have you. And in these cases, this is a key instance where we anticipate an area of follow-up and working with Bill Leslie. So let's just say that you had 35. It was a big project, and you reviewed 35, and let's just say you can't find 3 participants. What you'll do is email Bill and say, I'm monitoring this. Our initial review indicated that we couldn't find these 3 clients for this specific grant, and then Bill will follow up with the grantee to say, hey, we couldn't find this. Do you have documentation, pay stub, or other I-9 or other documentation that proves that this individual was employed? And there'll be a short window of time where that all will take place, and again, if the company isn't able to respond or whatever, it will end up in the letter as a finding. But we do have this opportunity a couple of days to work with Bill to get some of those issues resolved. So information that could clarify a potential finding. Okay. So that essentially are those are the technical instructions that go with the workNet instrument. Obviously, you can read through it yourself. It's pretty straightforward. If you do have any questions or concerns, let me know or let your regional manager know, and we certainly can go over those with you. And as I said a couple times, we will be sending out a finalized version, within the next week or two. I want to close out my section of the training this morning by just giving a general overview of the timeline, okay? And again, we're hoping to send this out, it may be directly from your regional managers or maybe as a group email. We are working again with Bill and Jill and the program staff. We're actually working this week and next to, again, remind the grantees that, we're at the end of the quarter. Quarter ended September 30th. And, these are the different reports, and DCEO will be monitoring, and these are the things that they'll be looking at. And just to give them a heads up that, again, we're working and these things are going to be due. We anticipate that by the middle of the month, by October 15th, we will have all of our announcement letters sent out. So, again, you'll be working, probably maybe not this week, but the following week with your regional managers and support staff to make sure that these letters are sent out. October 18th, on paper, could be the start of our desk review, and it's important to note that this monitoring is desk review. This is not an on-site review. Fiscal monitoring will have an on-site review component, but the programmatic monitoring will be reviewing the documents that they've submitted remotely. Now, if there are major issues and concerns, we can revisit that as far as a site visit, and perhaps we'll coordinate that in conjunction with the program staff as far as monitoring goes. But if there are issues that warrant a site visit from a programmatic standpoint, give your regional manager a heads up ASAP, and we'll address that as necessary. So during the last couple weeks of October, you can be starting the process of reviewing the grant agreement, reviewing the quarterly reports that are submitted thus far, the project plans, any of those initial components you can be looking at. Anticipate that you'll have to wait until that first and second week of November so you can verify the participants, verify their list, because they'll be updating those projects. Many of the current projects have the information in their last report saying, well, we're just getting going, or we're just planning, and so we anticipate that there's going to be a lot of activity that's going to be reported in those November reports. So we will have basically until, I believe we said November 10th is kind of an estimated date where we would have our desk work completed to the point where if there are initial or preliminary findings that might require us working with Bill to get clarification, to get more information, we would want to get that to Bill by approximately the 10th, and then he would have about 4 or 5 days to get a response back from the grantee. And at that point, starting on the week of November 15th, we review what we have, we'll review any potential findings, and we'll develop the findings letter and send those letters out by November 22nd. So that's the Monday before Thanksgiving, and hopefully we'll have those letters wrapped up that Friday before. But our pigeonhole date on paper is the 22nd of November. We'll then have a response due by December 13th. So we're basically giving the grantee really 2 weeks, factoring in the holidays, to respond to our findings letter, and we'll have ourselves another 2 weeks to review their response and then issue our follow-up letter. Okay, so the goal is to have this complete process wrapped up by December 31st. And again, our on-paper goal is to have that response reviewed and wrapped up, and again, communicating with your managers and with Bill by the week of December 22nd, because we know obviously the holidays are involved there. So our drop dead date for the date of our follow-up letter is December 31st. So that's a big picture overview of what we're up against as far as the sector-based grants, our initial task ahead of us, and any initial questions over the process or any of the systems that I've given an overview of. All right, great. With that, I'm going to switch it over to Awana, and she is going to go into more detail of the IWTS system, and I'm going to get, okay, hold on one second, technical issues.
So good morning, everyone. I always joke with John that whenever I sat through the last one, and I said, I'm so glad I'm part of the workNet team and not part of the Acme, SharePoint, whatever all the other stuff was team. So it makes me the good guy today, because you'll go through a much simpler process on going through the IWTS system on Illinois workNet. And what I'm going to do is actually switch over.
There we go.
And what I want to point out is, for those of you that are not here live, there is an attachment called IWTS Monitor Training Instructions, and it's just a 2-page sheet that walks you through. This will be like your checklist that you'll have to kind of walk you through how to look up files and how to go through all of this as you're doing your desk searches and all of that. And so this PowerPoint, I'll go ahead and really fly through it so that we can do the demo, because this will be the more useful part of the webinar. And so the first part will go through the actual process and workflow overview so you understand the context of, this has been going on since March, right? And so, so you understand how it all kind of came together. Then we'll go through and show you how to find resources, including this webinar, which will be archived on the Workforce Professionals Pathway under Incumbent Worker Training. We'll go through the basics, and the basics covers basically the sheet that I had included for you with your instructions, and so how to find a project, reviewing and printing project plans, you know, the project details, including employers and course registrations, and that's kind of the madness that Bill is going through right now, and finding out why people are not registered. And then to go ahead and go through your quarterly reporting, so how do you find that status, what the reporting pages include, and what those status definitions are, and so you'll have that attachment in there as well. And then review and submit. So all of this is printable, and we'll walk you through so you understand what you're looking for. And so the first part is just for you, and this is something that you can print out just so you understand what the differences are between the ARRA grants and the is it formula or non-formula?
Formula. It was
Formula.
WIA administered.
Right. And so the main difference is that the ARRA grants were initiated by DCEO, whereas the WIA grants were submitted by them and then, you know, approved and carried forth. So that's the general process, and you'll see that there's a very specific visual. I'm very visual, so it's always good to see kind of how things work out. And then for you to understand that once that these grants are initiated and how the training process works out, it shows you it doesn't matter, you know, how many grantees there are, how many employers, so you have an understanding, and you can print that out because this is micro size over here. So if you're curious as to logistically how it all works. And so we'll go ahead and show you how to get to the resources. And so this is a very, very important part of this training, because this is your cheat sheet. This is where you get to go and say, oh my God, I can't get a hold of WANA. How do I find this stuff? This is how you find it. And so you go ahead and you log into your Illinois WorkNet account under your Workforce Professionals. And so as you notice, I'm going to get my pointer out here. It's right here, right? So the gray bar, I think we've all have it ingrained in our brains now as to how to log in. Make sure your password is something that you'll remember, so we don't have to consistently, you know, reset it for you or anything like that. And so you go in, you put in your information, and then something I wanted to add about data security for the grantees as well as yourself and the employees that are part of this course is everything is encrypted on WorkNet, so no one has any issues, especially now that we're doing a lot of interface with IWTS. There are no issues with data security or anything like that because of the system that we have in place. So if you do get questions like that from your grantees, they're pretty familiar with this. I think I'm pretty much on first name basis with all of them at this point, but just in case they do ask, so you know the kind of protection that we have with our system and data security.
And just, sorry to interrupt, but I mean, that's as another, I mentioned in our training as far as that IWTS lookup screen. So that's actually one of the components that we've had to add to the process, because we're not, you know, WorkNet is not sending over full Social Security numbers. And again, this is just another reminder to ingrain, you know, data security and paper security of individuals' identity and their Social Security numbers is key here. So when you're pulling that private information from individuals, you know, make sure that you keep those papers secure, you keep those lookup screens secure, because, you know, again, they've gone through a lot of measures to protect identity, but then in the same sense, we're going into the private screen of IWTS to get the full SSN so we can get the MONDET out of IBIZ. So you can see that it's a journey down the road of getting that MONDET, but the key is to make sure that that private information stays secure. So, sorry.
No problem. That's very important stuff. So as you'll notice, number one on your instructional sheet is just to log in, and it kind of walks you through that process. And once you are properly logged in, you'll notice that you have your IWTS on your home page. There will be a sub-channel with IWTS, and so incumbent workers, and then right underneath is reporting, and I want you to know that they're two separate things. They're not connected, right? And so we'll go ahead and also, as you log in, you'll notice up at the top you have resources, and I'll show you a demo of what that looks like. But this is where you'll find all the instructional documents, step-by-step directions. You'll have all the policy updates. Literally everything you could possibly dream of having for IWTS exists there already. And so you go ahead and you could, and it'll be labeled so you know kind of the process, and this is what all the different grantees and LWIAs have been using. So this is also good for you to know, because a lot of people will call you and ask questions, and you could say, have you looked at the resources page? Did you check this out? And this helps you in filtering out, people that are waiting for you to coddle them through this. And so you go ahead and print all that stuff out. We also have the various archived webinars for that whole process and submitting information, reporting. So if you need a refresher, you can go ahead and use that there. Now, if we go through the basics of IWTS, project searches is very important because this is where you'll go in, and as I mentioned before, I'll show you a demo, but you go in and you click on incumbent workers, and then you'll get to the project's homepage. And you'll be able to select the type of projects, and the options that you have, and this is very important, is the status type, so whether or not it's in progress or submitted, accepted, whatever, completed. You'll know you can search by by project type. You can search by grantee. You can search by sector, LWIA, and then even a keyword filter. So this is good for you. Obviously, you'll only be able to see the LWIAs that you're designated to. So for instance, you can go in there and do your searches. And then once you do have that, you'll notice a list that pops up. And then you're able to select the actual grantee from whatever your parameters were for that search. And so you can go ahead and review the appropriate project. And so as I mentioned, status definitions. These are the definitions that you have that you can go by, and so for all of us to be clear as to what that means, we actually have those policy definitions right in your file share, so you can go ahead and print that out if you have any questions about that. And then for part 2 is IWTS plan review. So this is a way for you to really kind of go in and see what they've already submitted. And so you can print this document. So this is after you click review, this is what pops up in a new screen. And so you can go ahead and print this out and use it to reference the various trainings, because as John mentioned, a lot of them will have multiple. And when I say multiple, I mean multiple trainings. And so you want to be able to cross-reference kind of what they've already submitted based on what's in the system and in process right now. Once you have printed all of this out, you can go ahead and X out of it and go back to your original screen and click select, and this will give you direct access to the actual project. So once you're in there, you'll see the project wizard, and so you'll notice that it's always left-hand navigation, and so there's steps here, and you can't see it because it's just a PowerPoint, but when we go in, you'll notice the various steps that you can go ahead and click on. And the only things that we are really interested in at this point, or you all are really interested in, is employers and course registration. You want to see who they are and where people are in their trainings. And so you'll be able to see kind of the outcomes and all of that within the reports option, which I'll show you in a bit. But you'll notice it'll be right here on the end, and you'll be able to click through, and I'll show you how to access that information. This here, just to mention it to you now, is for specifics. If, for instance, something isn't making sense, you go in, it's the nitty-gritty. You won't need to really get into all of that if you just go ahead and you print your report summary. You'll have all those informations at large, but if you have a specific individual person question, you would go in and kind of look them up and see, okay, where are they in this process, right? The reason I'm telling you that is because John and Patrick were very specific to say, okay, if I'm following one specific individual through this process, how would I be able to find those details? Because the reports are always training totals or project totals, right? And so you wouldn't have that there. Now, for that, you'll have the employers page, and what that includes is the actual list. And then sometimes the employer and the OWIA are the same thing, same information, and then you'll have organizations, and then within that you'll have their primary contacts and work sites. And so they may have just one work site, they may have multiple work sites, depends on, obviously how much money they were given or what they have going on with that. And then you go into course registration, and what that allows you to do with your view as monitors is to go in and see what kind of courses they have, what kind of worksite information, and what you can do is actually filter by either all of those not in course, all of those in course, or all employees, and then you could even do it by last name if you have somebody specific in mind. So just so you know exactly what you have as options for you to search. And so with reporting, same thing. As you noticed, I pointed it, and I'll show you what it looks like there because it's a little bit harder on this PowerPoint, but it's right beneath incumbent worker training, and it's a separate sub-channel for that system. And so this is where you log in, same thing, or if you're already logged in, you just click on reporting, and then you go ahead and you could either go in and select a grantee or a WIA, or you can go in as, for instance, with Bill, he would go in and say, formula or non-formula, right? And then you would select projects and reports, and some have multiple reports because they've been doing this a while. Some may only have one. And so you go in and you select whatever the most current report is, or maybe you want to see what they all are. Select the type of report from the drop-down, and then it'll take you directly. So once it loads, and you go ahead and let it load, right, as John always says, it is a cycle that kind of picks everything up out of all of that, and you want to go in and you'll see the project status tab. And up here, you'll see it's actually 4 different tabs, and I'll walk you through what that looks like. But the initial tab that you'll get taken to is the project reporting tab, the status tab. And so once you're in there, the reporting page includes the status of reports, incumbent worker status for each training, their outcomes, and it's very specific as what those 3 outcomes are. So you have retained employment, you have wage increase or promotion, and they could have one or all of those options as an outcome. And then you have the review and submit tab, and this is what you'll use most often, because that's all the details and compiled into one page. And so you can go ahead and print this out and have a copy for yourself. And this can be used as documentation for your visits. And so here are some of the definitions for all of that, and kind of walks you through quarterly reports. And I just have that in there more for you to have on hand if you need it. And kind of what the bottom line was as we were introducing this to the grantees and OWIAs. And so they would first submit their plan, or they would get, initiated by DCEO. Then they would add their workers and work sites and register them to courses. And so you'll notice some of the issues that are coming up right now is people are not registered even though they're added. And then they would submit their reports once that they've been accepted and all of that. And so for you to have an understanding of what that looks like. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do now is go and switch over to the demo, and so your screen is going to change a little bit. And so you'll notice I've already had John log in because I want you to see what he sees, because this is all of your views as well. And so I'm on, just to show you how to log on. So you'd go to Workforce Professionals. You'd get a login page, and then you would be at the home page. And so what you'll notice is incumbent workers is here on your left-hand side. And you would go ahead and click on that. But before I do that, I want to show you where the resources are so that you understand how to find what you need. So you go ahead and click on resources up at the top in the gray bar. And then what you'll notice is you can scroll down and there's various things here, right? And what we want to do is go all the way down to incumbent worker training. Go ahead and you click on that. And you'll notice a couple of different things. We have a forum going for the LWIAs if they have questions, and this is moderated. It used to be by Ray Williams. Now it's moderated by Bill Leslie. And then we have various accordions here. And so what we're interested here in is the Illinois WorkNet information and resources. So you want to go ahead and you click on that yellow tab, and it expands. And it walks you through the whole process. Now, I want to point something out. On Illinois WorkNet, when you see an I bubble like this, it's an informational, instructional bubble. And so even if you walk out of here and you said, you know, way too many papers, everything that I've included for you on paper is also available for you to walk you through all of this stuff. And so you're never really left alone to figure it out on your own. And so as you notice, the first part is submitting a plan, and all the documents that they received for submitting a plan, and then the April 20th webinar on how to submit a plan. Then you'll notice step 2 is adding and updating incumbent workers, and step 3 is submitting quarterly reports. And so walks you through all the documents that they've been given so you understand what they have, as well as the main webinar. And so all of these webinars are something like an hour to an hour and a half. At most. So if you need a refresher course on what that looks like, I would strongly advise that you go through it, because it's literally what we're doing right now, only you won't be able to participate, right? And so other information, and for instance, this is where you can get the information as to who to contact for questions. And so if you have a technical issue with the system, if you have a general issue, and then we'll go ahead and change this so that it's built on his sector-based initiatives. And so just to give you an idea of what all this stuff looks like for you. Now we're going to go ahead and go back to home. And I know that John kind of gave you the skinny over the logging in and all of that. And so you're going to go ahead and click on incumbent workers. And there is a whole instructional document on security warnings, on how to get that pop-up to stop popping up. And for those of you that are on a DCEO desktop computers, it's a little bit different because CMS doesn't allow us to save sites. But if it is just with your laptop, you should be absolutely fine. So go ahead and click there. So for instance, that information is here as well. And so I want to show you what that looks like so you know how to get to it. And it'll just walk you through how to get rid of the security pop-ups. And so as I mentioned before, you have a couple of different options when you're searching. And so you can search by status, and all the status options are here. You can search by grantee or project organization, and it gives you the various options. You can do it by LWIA, project type, or keyword filter. I'm going to go ahead and pick, let's say, LWIA 12. And I'm just picking a random LWIA to show you what it looks like. And you're going to go ahead and click search. And so what you'll notice saying that there's no records found. Actually, let's pick a project. Plan Community College.
They grumblings.
Need to get rid of the LWIA selector, or confused.
Maybe. Let's get rid of that. And let's just... So you'll notice as you do your search, you'll have a list like this come up. And so the first thing we want to do is review, and so we'll just follow the instructional document piece by piece so you get familiar with it. So I'm going to go ahead and click Review. And in a pop-up window, with a new browser, you'll notice that it gives you all the project details. And so it'll walk you through, one, this is all the information you need as the primary and secondary contact. It'll tell you who to contact, et cetera, and the various information that they've included. And then they'll give you the general information on, for instance, project credentials, the sectors. Someone had a question about which sectors that these projects are in, and so you'll be able to see what that is. Industries by the SIC code. You'll have project occupations that is listed in here, and then your general information on employers, including financial statistics and all of that. And so you'll get in there, and you can print this out. So you could just go ahead and go to File and Print. And then you'll notice what kind of stuff is missing, or if they need to, and sometimes they add or update information. So these error messages, and you'll notice that in your PowerPoint, are not necessarily, it just means that if either they're missing something, they've updated something, so you'll be able to see that on there. And so this is what it looks like, and I just wanted to kind of walk you through each, and this is based on each work site, so you'll have that information. So I'm going to go ahead and X out so that we can go back to the project, and we're going to select it. So now, as you've noticed, we'll go into finding projects and reviewing those projects. So now we're going to go into employers so that you can see what these employers look like. And so under steps, you want to go ahead and click the employers link. And as I mentioned, you'll get to see all the work sites. So now this is when you're going in and visiting these grantees or LWIAs, you'll notice who their employers are for this project. And so you can go ahead and select an employer. So I'm going to go ahead and select one from the list. And then you'll notice all the various information that you need from them. So I know that you're going into actual places of employment, and so you'll have the contacts, the work sites, etc. So that's where you can find this information, including the data collected on their end as to what type of employment that they're providing. And so now we're going to go ahead and click on course registration. I want you to see what that looks like. And so, for instance, if maybe you forgot what all of that looks like, we're going to click on the info bubble, and it will walk you through how to do these searches. And so the first thing you want to do is select a course. I'm going to go ahead and pick the first. Actually, let's do the second one because it has 3 people in there. Or maybe it's the third session. And then the option that you get below that is to select the actual employer. So maybe various employers are in the same training course, and so I'm going to pick our original employer. And now we're going to select a work site. And so the options to look for employees are those not in course, those in course, and all employees. For the sake of our current searches, let's go ahead and do all of those not in course and see if they have anybody that's not registered. And so you'll notice that there are 2 people that are not in course, that are not registered. And so this would tell you, and it depends on where they are in their process. It may be a good thing, it may be nothing, so you can go ahead and select that. And so this is one way to do it. Let's go ahead and do all employees.
One of the fact they may have a number of employees not in course is not necessarily a negative.
It's not necessarily a negative. The problem is that DOL, when we're doing reporting now for DOL, right? And what happens is that all numbers get reported as how many employees they have. And so it distorts the numbers reported because they're not in courses. And so that's why it's important to get them registered. Even if they haven't maybe started, they need to be registered.
That was one of the questions, because I think it was EMD, Electromotive,
Mm-hmm.
had put all their employees into the system and then was registering them as they were going into
Yeah.
the training. And he's behind, because he had almost 1,000 employees that he was doing. and
Right,
he-
but there's a mass update.
Yeah.
So you don't do it one by one, and he should know that because we went through that training with them. And so, and I'm not going to spend time doing that with you all, but there is an individual and mass update of outcomes, of registration. You could register those 1,000 employees within a couple of clicks. And something I wanted to point out, for instance, the page size, we go up to 100. So they could go in and it would be a 10-step, you know, if you have 1,000 employees, a 10-step update for each one of them. So I just want you all to know what you're going to be getting, so you know what the context of all the questions are. And so, for instance, we'll notice, let's go ahead and do all employees just to see how many people they did. See, and this is not good now because all they have are those 2 employees and they're not registered, right? And so this is a way for you to kind of reference that, along with what you've printed out at this point, right? So these are so this is part of step 2. So you know we've covered step 1 and step 2, and now we're going to go ahead and go to step 3, which is the reporting aspect of it. And so I'm going to go ahead and, as I mentioned before, under incumbent workers, there's reporting. And so we're going to click on reporting. And as I mentioned before, all the info bubbles, it's not loading right now, but it'll show you the timeline, for instance, of the reporting, so that everyone knows when these grantees have to submit their information by and what that looks like. And you go ahead and you just click and it goes back up. You could go ahead and also click here for information on how, you know, those that have not started yet and what that looks like. So what we're going to do is go ahead and select a project, and let's go ahead and select UPS because I know they have a bunch of stuff in there. And then we're going to go ahead and select a report. So we're going to select the most recent one. And so you'll notice, as I mentioned before, the first screen that you go to is the project status, right? And there are 4 other tabs. So you have search report, which is where we were. Then the next one is project status report. You'll go to training status, training outcomes. Please note that if they are not done or don't have outcomes, they won't come up in training outcomes, right? And so if you're looking for somebody and it's not coming up there, that's why, because they're not done yet.
Right.
They don't have an outcome.
And that's one of the questions in the instrument, is to look at the training outcomes. And so if the training is in process, then that would be an NA, because I think the question asks something to the effect of, you know, did the individual have an outcome by the end of the training?
And as you'll notice, the outcomes are, you know, retained employment, you know, promotion or gained wages or something along those lines. And so clearly if they're not done, none of that has happened yet. And so you can go ahead and print this out, as I mentioned before, and you could just see kind of the details. So they'll have the progress, and you have an idea, and they'll constantly be updating this because there's various reports that they're submitting. Some of the obstacles maybe, and so this is good for you to do your homework with this before you go meet with them, so you know kind of what their issues are, some of their benefits, and you'll see who did what and when it was last updated. And so what I want to go ahead and go into incumbent worker training status, and let's go ahead and see where they're at with this. And as I mentioned before, if you ever get lost, go ahead and click on the info bubble. We'll show you how to actually look for it. And so I'm going to click here on the drop-down tab, and they only have 1 course. And so you'll notice all of these people have completed and earned a certificate. And so just to show you what those options include for them, you have not started, in progress, completed a certificate of completion earned, completed credentials earned, did not complete requirements. And so you'll know what that looks like. And also what I wanted to add as well is here, because you notice how many pages we have, about 4 different pages, I'm going to go ahead and switch it over to 100. And so this will give you an idea of who's doing what and where they're at in their process, right? Now we're going to go ahead and go into incumbent worker training outcomes, and it's loading. And this is where you get to see what that looks like. So if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, updating their project, you would get all of this information. So the people that we just saw on the previous page with training status, these are their outcomes. They did all of the above, or et cetera, et cetera. And so you can go ahead and change the page number. You can click on info to see what that looks like and how it's updated. If, you know, when you're there with them and they have questions or you find something that's missing. Now I'm going to take you to the last page, and this is the review and submit. And this is, I wanted to show you all the other stuff first so you know where to find it, but this is predominantly what you're going to be looking at because it's the summary, right? And so depending on what your caseload is with all of these people, you don't necessarily want to go in and do the nitty-gritty with each individual person, but I want you to know where to find it. And so it'll give you an idea of the overview, you know, achieved outcomes, progress reports, all of that, and then it'll give you the total count. So with IWTS, you have the option in the other part, as I showed you before, to find the individual person and where they're at, but here you just get the total count for the course. The total count for those that only retained employment, the total count for those that retained employment, wage increase, and promotion. And so if, for instance, a couple people only got a promotion, you would have a different section for the promotion part. So this gives you the full overview of that project, and this you could print out and use it within your reports. So what I want to do now is actually have you show me how to get to all the stuff that I showed you. And I know that this is totally putting you on the spot, but you know what, it'll be great for you later. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the home page, and I'm going to ask you how I can get to the resources. So let's say I'm at the WIA or at the project and I need a specific resource for IWTS. Where would I find it? Very good. So we're going to go ahead and click on resources. And then what do I do to get to incumbent worker? Scroll down and? Very good. We're going to click on incumbent worker. And now that I'm here, I don't see anything. Where do I get my form?
The yellow bands.
You scroll down.
To the employee to Illinois WorkNet information.
Illinois WorkNet information. Very good. So I'm going to go ahead, and then these are the different steps, right? So all the documents, and you'll notice, for instance, the words list, the fields list. If you click on this, it'll pop out, and it's a PDF that you can print out on what this looks like, right? And so you'll have a couple of different options to play with. So okay, let's say I got everything I needed. I've watched all my webinars. I want to go back and verify something. So I'm going to go back to home. And then where do I go? So I want to go in and do step 2, IWTS project searches. I want to search on a project.
Going to IWTS on the left.
So I want to go in and click on incumbent workers, right?
Yes.
Okay. Taking its sweet time now. Okay, and then I'm on that page. What do I want to do? Let's say I want to find a project. How would I find a project? Let's say I want to find Heartland Community again. What would I do?
Select grantee.
Very good. So I'm going to select a grantee. And then what do I do? Search. Okay. Now I want to go ahead and review this grantee so I can print out that review. What would I do?
Report? No.
Click on review.
The difference between select and review being,
What is the difference between select and review? What, can you go into this? Is there a way for me to go into these fields? Can you see me getting into any of this? No, it's just a summary, right? So review is just the information. So I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, this is awesome. I'm going to print it out. I need this before I go on to my grantee, right? And so I want to get back to the other screen to be able to select it, and what do I do? I want to X out. This is a brand new browser, right? It popped up. So I X out of that new browser and I go back and I select it now. Okay. Now I'm on the actual project details, right? And I want to go ahead and see which employers they have within this project. How do I find out employer information?
steps.
Okay, in steps, what do I do in steps? Employers, right? So this process builds upon itself, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click on employers. To see who they are. And now I have an employer list, but I don't see any of their information. What do I do? Just select one of the ones you're looking for, right? So we're going to go ahead and stick to Illinois laborers and contractors. And then I get to see all of their information, right? And so I can get their contact information, work sites. Well, that's great. Now I have that. Now I'm really curious to see who is registered in these courses. Now that I know what their work sites are, where do I go in the steps process to do that? Course registration, right? So we're going to just go ahead and click on course registration. And now what do I do? What's the first part?
Select the course for employees.
We're going to select a course, right? Because it's always attached to the course and to the work site, right? So we're going to select, let's go to lead. Okay, now what do I do? Let's say I have a course. What do I need to know next? We need to select an employer because there may be multiple employers in that course, right? So we want the laborers, right? Because this is who we were looking at initially. Okay, now that we have the employers, though, maybe those employers have multiple locations, so we want to go ahead and do what? Worksite. And then we're going to show employees, right? And I picked all employees because I want to see who's in there and who's not, right? And this gives you the whole picture, right? So-and-so, so Ron is not registered, but Terrence is. And so you would know the overview of what kind of course registration information you're going to get. Let's say, okay, awesome, I knew all about Ron, I've spoken to so-and-so, and so now I want to go into reporting to see what these outcomes are. How would I get to reporting? You go back to your left navigation and you click on reporting, right? Okay, now that I'm in reports, what do I do? Select your project, right? Now we're going to go ahead and go to, let's say, UPS, because that's what we were playing with before. And you notice you can't select the report until you select the project, right? Now we have our drop-down tab, and we want to select the report, and we're going to select the most recent one, right? I mean, you could select whatever you want, but for this example, we're going to select the most recent one. Okay. What do I do? I want to see what kind of training status they have. What do I select? Training status here, right? And now, once it loads, I'm going to do what? Select a course. And they only have one course, so this is super easy for them. But some people have, 40 courses. So you'd have to know exactly what you're looking for. And now I see all these people and their status. Now let's say I don't want to look at, 15 pages. I just want to look at a couple of pages. What do I do?
Page
I change the page size, right, so that we can see more than 25 people. Very easy stuff, right? Now let's say I want to see outcomes. So all these people completed it, but what does that mean? And I want to see outcomes. What do I do? Really easy stuff. We just go over to training outcomes. And you can see why it would get annoying if you don't change your security settings, because you just keep clicking out, right? And so we're going to go ahead and change the page size, right, because we learned how to do that in the last one. And we want to see who's doing what. And so here I am, and let's say maybe I'm looking for a David. You can do a name search. If you have a specific person in mind you're tracking down, and you'll find just that person, right? So you don't have to scroll through all those people. Okay, let's say I don't want all of this, and I just kind of wanted to see what their review was to print it out. What would I do? This is what they've reviewed and submitted, right? Because here we don't actually access any of this stuff. So it's loading. You'll go ahead and you'll be able to see all the outcomes, progress, the obstacles, benefits, and then the worker status summary for each course. Now I want to print this out, maybe staple it to the other project status review that you printed out before, and this is the overall, steps you would need to know for incumbent worker training. And so I'm going to go ahead and go back over and stop sharing and go over to the polling questions and Q&A for all of you that may have questions. If you are just joining us via the computer speakers, go ahead and put your questions in the chat pod. If you are on the phone, go ahead, and this is a good time for you all to ask questions if you have them. For those of you that are physically located in the room, we'll repeat the questions for those that are on the webinar so that they can hear you, because it's hard for the Polycom. So go ahead if you have any questions. We're that good, huh?
I think we just need to work with it and
Right.
play with it.
Right, right. Yeah, and again, I think that, part of this is you can see, you'll see parallels. I know that some of you have worked with Illinois WorkNet, most recently in the summer youth program monitoring. You can see it, with the IWTS system. you see, you get comfortable with the navigation and loading a project or loading a grant, and then, clicking through. There's a lot of different information, a lot of detailed information that you can drill down, and, your job as a monitor is to, know that the information is there, get access to it, but know that there are resources here if you have problems and we can't find something, or if we need to modify your review of the grant because it's not fitting our general parameters, definitely work with your regional manager so you can, monitor it appropriately. Again, the instrument that we have is intended for the general review, and any questions, follow back with your regional manager. For the Cook region, there are 10 projects. For the Northeast region, there are 5 projects. For the other regions, those make up the other 15. So spread throughout. There are 2 projects in the Cook region with adult and dislocated workers, and so if you are assigned to those, that's going to be an additional review as well. So again, just know that we know that the reviews are pretty straightforward, but it can be technically difficult because you're flipping between different systems to find out a lot of different information. So know that this is kind of a baseline for additional project grants that are not formula WIA or formula trade, and that these additional 15% grants or ARRA grants as we wrap up ARRA. Any other questions? Any other issues?
And I just wanted to just remind you that the best thing that I could recommend when you go and play with the system is just go ahead and print this out. For those of you that have, when I say this, I mean the Illinois WorkNet IWTS training instructions, because it's back-to-back, it's simple. I've kept it as easy as possible, and if you follow the steps, it'll create that routine in your mind so that you have it down by the time you get to the actual location and won't have the technical difficulties that maybe you would have questions with. So go ahead, and definitely encourage you to play because it's not that hard. And then if you do have questions, it'll be easier for you to get them answered before you get going on your project. So if we don't have anything else, we'll go ahead and wrap up. And John, if you wanted to add anything.
Nope, I think that's it. Again, any questions, let me know or let your manager know, and we'll go from there. For the northern part of the state, I know that these are going to be sandwiched in. Again, as I mentioned, as far as the timeline goes, we're going to sandwich these in with our data validation, and the bulk of our review will take place mid to late October through mid to late November, and that's going to be kind of a concentrated review. And again, working again in cooperation with Bill and the program staff, and hopefully we'll minimize any issues or concerns. Bill, do you have anything to add?
One thing we're going to be doing for you, we will be making the contacts with the employer that will constitute your
exit and entrance.
Your entrance and then your exit. So that I will make that contact based upon when you have sent that announcement letter out. And mom basically say, did you receive it? Do you understand it? I will then email each of you individually upon contacting that employer so that you can put the data into ACME. I will not be getting into the ACME system.
I mean, again, we're going to try to stay true to our ACME protocol as far as the different tasks that we go through. And again, we know that we're on kind of a hybrid or modified review of this because we're only looking at a desk review, so we're not on site. But again, that desk review will still have components of an entrance and an exit, but unless there is a major issue, you're not contacting the company directly, okay? And if there is a major issue, you need to talk to your manager to make sure everybody's on the same page. And again, communication with Bill is going to be key, and we'll have follow-up email with instructions, and at least for our region up here, Northeast region, you'll have your assignments, within the next 2 weeks, along with that follow-up email as well. Great. Well, thank you all, and thank you, Awana and WorkNet for hosting the technology end of this, and appreciate everybody's attention, and you have a great afternoon, and don't hesitate to let us know if you have any questions or additional concerns.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.